We're now back in session for the next 5 minutes. Commissioners, you've received a copy of the minutes of December meeting of the board. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? We can get them approved before 1:30.
I don't have any, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have any.
Commissioner Mulvaney?
I do not have any, thank you.
Okay, the minutes will be approved of the December board meeting as issued. Several of the, is there any old business before the commission? A quick question, what's the status of the letter that we are preparing for possible legislation? Is that under consideration still? Mr. Dixon?
Well, there was one draft. I guess after tomorrow there'll be another draft. I'll look at it again tomorrow. Send another draft.
So that's still under consideration, right?
Yes.
Okay. Any other old business? If not, our new business will require possibly some discussion of, not a long discussion, but some discussion for several minutes. So with that, we will wait for about a minute before we go back into session to hear case 6280. So I see we have them. Is there anyone on the I would ask our attorney, Mr. Dixon, to please call case 6280.
All right, case 6280, a Class B beer, wine, and liquor license issued to Stephen Tiedemann for the use of GT Westminster LLC, trading as Green Turtle Sports Bar and Grill, 830 Market Street, Westminster, Maryland, 21157. Violation hearing, sale to a minor. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A delivery of notice of hearing. Acknowledgement of receipt of letter dated October 26, 2020, delivered by hand on October 30th, 2020. This is October 26, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Stephen Tiedemann. There is a alcohol compliance violation sheet dated October 22nd, 2020, and completed and signed by Inspector Charles Carey. There is a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 on the letterhead of Brian L. DiLeonardo, State's Attorney, and it was signed by, I guess, server Rachel Owners. There is a photograph of the volunteer at a table with a bottle of Bud Light beer open. There is the driver's license of the volunteer that shows he is under 21 until July 31st, 2021. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that in evidence. At this time, I would ask all those who intend to testify in this case, please stand and raise your right hand and be sworn in by Ms. Vance.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. As we proceed with this case, I would ask all those who intend to testify when they are called upon to please state your name and your address for the record, please. With that, Inspector Carey, are you presenting this on behalf of the commission?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
All right. Good afternoon. Liquor Board Inspector Charles Carey from the Carroll County Liquor Board. On 22 October of 2020, at 3:25 p.m., I had an underage volunteer enter the Green Turtle Restaurant of Westminster, which is located at 830 Market Street, Westminster, Maryland. I had him sit at the bar and order an alcoholic beverage. The volunteer was served a bottle of Bud Light beer. The server, Miss Owners, did not ask our volunteer, who is only 20 years old, for any form of ID. I spoke to the server, Miss Owners, who advised me that she did not ask our volunteer for any ID. She had no reason for not asking for ID other than he looked old enough. Miss Owners is not tip certified, and all our paperwork was signed and completed. And also I request that both photos in this case be entered into evidence, and that's our case.
We'll accept them into evidence. Mr. Tiedemann, or who will be presenting your facts of what happened and so forth?
Right. Can you hear me okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So, Steve Tiedemann, I am the resident agent for the Green Turtle. I'm also an attorney. I have been the Green Turtle's resident agent for quite some time. I am not appearing here today as an attorney for the Green Turtle, but as the resident agent. So I just want to be clear about that. And what I'm going to do is just let the various representatives of the Green Turtle go in turn, the ones that are on the phone and also here by video, to explain what happened. I can tell you that upon learning of this incident, I was, as you may guess, not very happy and taken aback, and followed up with Shelley, who's on the phone, about what sort of HR measures were taken with regards to this server, and she can certainly provide more information about that. And all I can do is, throw myself on the floor and ask for the mercy of the commission with regards to this particular one instance. I know that it generally has not been a problem for us in the past to be serving minors, and it should not have happened this time. I'm stunned that the server did not even ask for an ID. So with that, I'll just turn it over. I think Shelley, and then Shelley, you can decide which one of our people should be, talking to the board about what happened. And certainly the board should feel free to directly ask questions of anyone, including myself. Because again, I'm not counsel for anybody here. I'm the resident agent. So.
Ms. Shelley, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm Shelley Collins. I'm the VP of HR for the Green Turtle. I have on the phone with me Randy Black and Jay Green. Randy Black is the general manager of our Westminster location, and Jay Green is our senior director of operations and supervises Randy. Randy has put together information regarding this incident. Again, this is not typical of us. We are employer in good standing as it refers to serving properly. And I'd like to turn the floor over to Randy to speak specifically about this individual that was hired during the pandemic, and back to kind of within the pandemic, how our training was a little lapsed it is truthful that this bartender was not tip certified, as we were working through a pandemic and trying to get all employees tip certified. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Randy Black.
Hi, my name is Randall Black, the general manager here over at the Westminster location. I live at 6 Garden Lane, Hanover, PA 17331. That is me. So I'll be the one discussing it, answering some of the questions directed towards me, and going over the incident for you gentlemen. So I'd like to start off by saying, serving alcohol is an honored privilege. We take it very, very seriously. It's on top of my mind every day. It's on the top of our employees' minds every day. In my whole career, I've never had an incident like this. I've never had an employee who's worked for me who has served someone under 21. And I've been in the industry for over 10 years. I have 4 young boys of my own, and this is something that I despise, despicable, and something that really hits home for me. Some of the things that we're doing, that we continue to do, is all of our front of house team members are tip certified within 30 days of employment. Since the pandemic, we usually hold classes. We had some trouble there, but we're back on track. So all of our current employees are tip certified as within that 30-day time frame. We also conduct monthly trainings around serving alcohol safely, not just the minors, making sure we are not over-serving anyone. It's hugely important. So we do a monthly training. We also discuss it in our weekly and daily meetings that we have. Any articles that I've seen come through on your end, especially minutes and different things, we talk about and we discuss heavily things happening in the area, so that it's on the top of everyone's mind. A part of that training process as well is when you get hired at the Green Turtle, we discuss in the interview process. We have 2 trainings that are involved with this. One's called Safe Alcohol Service, and the other one's called Serving Alcohol Responsibly. And every single person who's in the front of house goes through these trainings. They're about an hour or 2 long, and they're very detailed and very formal. On top of that, our handbook states it's very clearly anyone 40 years or we ID every single person under 40 years old, and vertical IDs are not accepted here. Anyone who has a vertical ID under any circumstances are not accepted at our location. And anyone who violates that policy under any circumstances gets held to the fullest extent by us.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Black or Mr. Tiedemann?
I have a quick question for Mr. Tiedemann. You were the resident agent for the corporation?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you a Carroll County resident?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I do know
I actually own property in Carroll County. I reside in Carroll County. I also own property in other jurisdictions as well.
Okay, thank you.
I did want to add a few things. I know that we've passed many of these. Last one was most recent. We had someone come in November 30th, was our most recent one 2 months ago, and we did pass that one. Also, we're always open and trying to help anything we can do in Carroll County. We also participated in a scanning of IDs so that we could help get fake IDs off the streets. I know I worked with Keith, and we brought him. He came in. He asked if we could participate, and I'm more than welcome and always willing to participate in these things. And we were actually able to get some IDs out there, and we're always willing to cooperate and do whatever we can for the community to make sure we're doing our part.
Yeah, Mr. Black, it looks to me, and you probably agree with this, that this is the first violation that we have on our records going back to 2014.
Yes,
Looks like
sir.
you've had, I'm sorry, 11 consecutive successful compliance checks. That this is the first failure for the restaurant. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir. And I know that. Sir. And like Mr. Tiedemann, I was done. Immediately, I was called, and we took the proper actions right away, right then and there. It's something that I was baffled because it's something that I do hold all employees accountable. One of the things that we talk about very often.
Yeah, and I think you testified that you have 2 in-house training courses.
Yes,
for
sir.
all employees, and that's in addition to requiring a TIPS or TAM certification within 30 days of employment.
Yes, sir.
So tell us about the server, Ms. Honors. How long has she been working there at this time?
She was hired right when we were coming back from the pandemic, so around mid to late July. She had some experience at some other restaurants when we brought her on. She started as a server and she became a bartender. That would have been her probably about second or third week bartending. And yeah, that's that. She went through all the training. We stressed the importance. All the other bartenders stressed the importance of it. But she was only with me a short time. She was one of our new hires, so under like 3 months she was with us.
So she's gone? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, immediately after the incident, she was terminated for violating company policy, serving a minor. We have zero expectation. It doesn't matter who you are. You could be here for a very long time. We take it that seriously. It doesn't matter. If you're someone under 21, then it's terminated.
Okay. Well, thank you. Mr. Black.
Mr. Moini, do you have any questions of Mr. Black or Mr. T?
Yes, I just wanted to get some clarification, Mr. Black. So although she was not TIPS trained or certified, is your testimony that she did have the 2 in-house trainings prior to this incident, or did she not?
Yes, ma'am. She had both in-house trainings along with the signing of the handbook that clearly states our policy around serving alcohol. Included in that would be also our monthly trainings that we conduct and our weekly meetings that we have discussing important topics, and alcohol is always on that. I have a communication board for bartenders. One of the articles that are on there is the most recent up-to-date information regarding alcohol, how it can affect them as the bartender / server, and the importance of it. So I have that board right when you walk into the bar. It's right there with the information of it, so it's always top of mind.
And you say your in-house policy is to card if they look under 40.
Yes, ma'am. Under 40, and we don't accept any vertical IDs.
Okay. And additionally, you say you do have the employee sign the paperwork that they've gone through training to verify that in fact did happen.
Yes, ma'am. During our training process, they get signed off by the manager, along with during the handbook is signed on the computer. Another thing is during our validation, when we're going through and kind of giving the go ahead for our training process, if someone's not carded, because usually I'm sitting down or one of my co-managers sitting down on it, if they don't ID during that time, it's an automatic fail. And they do not pass the training process to even get put onto the floor.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Mr. Black or Mr. Tatum?
If I could just make one additional comment. So I have, many of you may know, I don't know, I have 9 kids, many of whom are adopted, and they range from 27 to 3 or 4. I'm sorry, 3. And anyway, So throughout the years, I always have some kid that is somewhere between the ages of 17 and 21. And so I occasionally go there with my family and see if one of my volunteer children can ask and get a drink. And I've never run into any problems where anybody's ever served one of them. That's not to say that it's, you know, statistically significant, but, you know, we all are aware of it, and we all care about Carroll County and Carroll County youth. So.
If there are no further questions of Mr. Tatum or Mr. Black at this time, is it Shelley?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any comments to make?
I do not.
Commissioners, any other questions before we close testimony?
No, sir.
At this time, testimony in this case is closed, and we will move into any closing or final statements that you would like to make. Mr. Tiedemann, do you like to make any final comments?
Yes, just that there's no excuses. I'm not making any excuses. And it's more than regrettable. It's unacceptable. And I know that the people I've talked to with Green Turtle and my own involvement is that we endeavor this not to happen. It has happened. We don't deny it. And we just ask for your consideration.
Inspectors,
Shelley?
do you have any closing comments?
No, sir, not at this time.
At this time, testimony and evidence is closed. We will now discuss the merits of the case. But before we do, I assume as a sometime patron for lunch of the establishment, it's been my experience to witness numerous times where IDs were requested of patrons that my personal opinion was that they're not near as old as I am, but they certainly looked like they were in their 40s or 50s. So with that being said, that's my only comments. So.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make some comments, I think it's perfectly clear that this licensee is doing a good and thorough job, better than almost any licensees that have come before this board since I've been sitting on it, in connection with preventing underage sales. Mr. Black has testified to a litany of things, and they're all good, and I think they're all significant. He testified that all the servers are TAM certified within 30 days, and that all current servers are alcohol management certified. Mr. Black testified that there are monthly training courses regarding the safe service of alcohol, which is very commendable again. There are 2 in-house training courses that employees go through, in addition to the alcohol management courses that they're required to take. They don't accept vertical IDs, which I think is a good policy to prevent problems like we're seeing. Frankly, sometimes a licensee can do all they can do reasonably, and these things do happen anyhow. I think it's significant that this is the first compliance failure on the part of Green Turtle Westminster. And by my count, they had 11 successful consecutive compliance checks up until this one. I think this licensee is doing everything it can. I think they're doing a good job. Sometimes it doesn't matter how hard an effort the licensee puts forward. People are human, things happen, and I think that circumstances as described, that this occurred during a period where there are all restaurants are experiencing some difficulties with being open, with being closed, with getting training, with other things. that's not an excuse, but I think it's an explanation about how perhaps this particular server maybe missed some of the important training that the Green Turtle offers. Those are my comments at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mawini?
I agree with Commissioner Barnhart. It looks like the Green Turtle is very adamant about making sure that they're responsible community members and making sure that this is not a common occurrence in their establishment.
Mr. Chairman, unless there are further comments from the board, I'm prepared to make a motion.
We would accept the motion at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In case 6280, I move that this board find the licensee culpable for the violation as charged and fine the licensee $300 and suspend that fine conditioned on no further violations in a 24-month period from today's date. That's my motion, sir.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second that motion.
Motion has been properly made and seconded that we find the licensee culpable, and this commission issues a fine of $300, of which it will be suspended if there are no violations in the next 24 months. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. So ordered. Mr. Tiedemann, we find the establishment culpable, and this commission issues a fine of $300, which will be suspended if there are no further violations in the next 24 months. If there are no questions, this
There are
case
none.
is complete. Thank you very much, and we wish you all continued successful business at your establishment. This
Thank you,
concludes
and,
case.
Thank you to the commissioners and also to Ms. Vance and Mr. Dixon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Mr.
your time.
Inspector,
I'm sorry.
Inspector Benfer, you mentioned to me a possible phone call in regards to an addition to an existing property.
Yes, I can get Kelly Schaefer on the line, Kelly Schaefer Miller on the line about Tonytown Liquors, if that's what you wish.
Well, we have 5 minutes if you can get her before the next case is scheduled.
Mr. Commissioner, could I take 2 of those minutes for a personal recess? May I take 2 minutes for a personal recess?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
While he's getting her on the phone,
Yes.
we'll recess for 2 minutes. Inspector Benfer, see if you can get her, please. Schedule that we have, there is a request from Tonytown Liquors to construct an addition onto its existing building for storage of inventory. Commissioner Mulvaney, I think we have received, and as Commissioner Barnhart has returned, I think we've received a diagram with the letter from Ms. Kelly in regards to this. Do you have any questions about it, or would Ms. Kelly have any comments? I personally have none.
I'm here and
I have
happy to
none either.
answer any questions that members of the board have. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Tawnytown Liquors went before the Tawnytown Planning Commission and received approval for this. So the next step would be to receive any permitting approval that they need prior to the construction of this. So that will still be a step after this board's approval. Thank you.
Commissioners Barnhart and Mulvaney, do you have any objections or any questions on this proposed request?
I have no questions, and I also have no objections based on their ability to obtain permits.
I agree with Commissioner Mulvaney. I have no objections at all.
Ms. Kelly, based upon those comments that you have heard, I certainly have no objections. So you may proceed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We still got 2 minutes. There is a request from Ms. Deary concerning the outdoor events in the summer to expand to Saturdays as well as Fridays in Sykesville. Inspector Benfer, this is merely of addition of some dates that it has been successful and well attended and well handled in the past. Is that correct?
Yes. And the rain date for all during the week is Sunday from 3 to 6 in case it rains Friday night.
Commissioners, you should have, excuse me, should have received a copy of that request and should be well aware of it. Do you have any questions or comments in regards to the request?
I do not. I can attest from personal experience that the Sykesville police are there and they have a presence for each one of these events, and the events are very orderly. And I, of course, will state for the record that I'm related to Ms. Deary, but I do not feel that that clouds my judgment whatsoever. Thank you.
Commissioner Mulvaney, do you have any objections or questions?
I do not have any questions, and I do not have any objections. Thank you.
With that being said, please convey to them that of our approval. And with that being said, my watch says it is
Can I add one more thing? Can I add one more thing, Chairman? I will contact Patapsco Distilling and have a letter from them also requesting to be a part of this event.
I'm sorry.
You do not have formal requests from them, even though they're in on the diagram and have been in the past? No?
We have not had formal requests from them yet, but I will
Okay.
get formal requests from them.
I'm sorry, Keith, whose request is not formal?
Patapsco Distillery.
Ah. Yeah, they have in the past always joined in. And they have a separate outdoor area and they participate in these events all the time.
And they have written a letter in the past requesting it, but I will have them write another letter, just make sure everything's taken care of.
The letter that I'm looking at says for the past 4 years, the Vine on Main joined with 2 other businesses, Sykesville Pottery and Arts Center and Patapsco Distillery, to present TGIF on Main. It's finally Friday, blah, 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 blah. But you might want to clarify it, but I would assume from that comment that they are on board. With that said, we'll move back to our agenda. Our 2 o'clock case is 6281. Mr. Dixon, please.
All right, case 6281, a Class BC beer, wine, and liquor license with catering issued to Timothy M. Catroco, Colleen M. Hunter, and Joseph G. Kern for the use of OG Olive Garden of Westminster, Inc., trading as the Olive Garden Italian Restaurant, 500 Gorsuch Road, Westminster, Maryland, 21157, violation hearing, sale to a minor. To file this matter, we have the following documents. A, notice of intention to defend with the box checked. I do not intend to contest the alleged violation. Dated November 11th, 2020. There's an email to Joe Vance from Leanne Calderon, dated November 17, 2020. Says that Randy Deloach, General Manager, Amber Magera will be at the hearing along with Tim Catroco and Leanne Schreckengoss. There's a delivery for notice of hearing. Acknowledged receipt of letter dated October 26, 2020, delivered by hand on October 30th, 2020. There's October 26, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Timothy Catroco, Colleen Hunter, and Joseph Kern. And there's an alcohol compliance violation sheet dated and completed October 22nd, 2020, completed by and signed by Inspector Charles Carey. There's a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 under the stationery of Brian L. D. Leonardo, State's Attorney, and signed by the server, Skylar Wheeler. There's a photograph of the volunteer at a table with a glass of beer in front of him. There is a vertical Maryland driver's license of the volunteer that states the person is under 21 until July 31st, 2021. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that into evidence. At this time, I would ask all of those who intend to testify in this case, whether via virtual or telephone, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do.
Thank you. Once again, before we proceed in this case, as you are called to testify, please state your name and your address for the record. It can be a personal residence or it can be a business address. With that said, Inspector Carey, will you be presenting the case on behalf of the department?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Liquor Board Inspector Charles Carey for Carroll County, Maryland. On 22 October 2020 at 4:30 p.m., I had an underage volunteer enter the Olive Garden restaurant to sit at a table and order an alcoholic beverage. The volunteer was served a glass of Bud Light draft beer. The server, Miss Wheeler, did not ask our volunteer, who was 20 years old, for any form of ID. I spoke to Miss Wheeler, the server, who advised that she did not ask our volunteer for any form of ID. She further advised the volunteer looked over 35 years old. Miss Wheeler is alcohol management trained, but not TIPS or TAMS certified. All paperwork was completed and signed. Also, I request that both photos in this case be entered into evidence, and that's our case.
We'll accept that into evidence.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for our inspector. Mr. Carey, you testified that the server had alcohol management training, but it was not tips or TAM. Is that correct?
No, it must be training provided by the Olive Garden. That's the only training that she knew of that was through the restaurant.
Okay, so she had in-house training, but not, okay, thank you.
Mr. Carey, that completes your
Yes, sir.
presentation of the case.
That's our case.
At this time, who is going to testify first on behalf of the licensee or the establishment? Please state your name and address and your relationship with the licensee.
Leanne, you're muted.
That's
We
better.
can't
Good
hear
afternoon,
what-
Mr. Chair. This is Leanne Schreckengoss with Royston, Muller, McLean, and Reed, representing the applicants in this matter. If it's okay, I will begin by way of proffer and then introduce you to all of the individuals who are on the line today. As indicated by Mr. Dixon, we do not intend to dispute the violation. As indicated in Inspector Carey's report, unfortunately, our server did not ask for ID, and therefore she was not put in a position, she did not put herself in a position to take advantage of all the tools that Darden has and the Olive Garden has in place as far as age verification. This individual had gone through in-house training. A copy of her training sign-off was provided to Ms. Vance yesterday. It should be as part of your application. It shows Skylar Wheeler completed the age verification training and the responsible service of alcohol training. Both programs have also been provided to the board for your file. You will see from that the responsible service of alcohol program is very in-depth and it basically mirrors a TIPS or TAMS training certification program. Also included are the enhanced age verification procedures that are in place at this restaurant. And again, unfortunately, Ms. Wheeler chose not to ask for ID and therefore was not able to use the verification stuff to understand that this individual was underage. First of all, they do not accept vertical ID. So had she asked for ID, service would have been halted immediately. Second of all, if for some reason she had asked for ID, she would have been instructed to write down the date of birth and go to what's called their DASH system and enter the patron's date of birth. The DASH system will then flash a green screen or a red screen to indicate whether or not the purchaser is of age. If a red screen is flashed up, alcohol does not get rung up. If a green screen is flashed up, alcohol does get rung up. But again, in this case, because she did not ask for identification, we didn't even get to those steps, which is very unfortunate. Darden and Olive Garden do a tremendous job of training all of their employees. Every single individual front of house employee must go through those responsible alcohol service programs before they hit the floor. And on the line here are Brandy Deloach, the area director, and Amber Magera, who is the general manager of this location, who have since the time of this incident retrained the entire staff, front of house staff, through these alcohol awareness training programs, having many breakout sessions for them. And also included in the exhibits that I presented are minutes, summary minutes from those retraining programs. Each individual also had to retake another test, which is part of their employee files at the restaurant. Ms. Deloach and Ms. Magera can go into further details on that if the board is interested. But I just wanted to point out for the board how thorough of a job Olive Garden does in training their employees. And unfortunately, we can't control the fact that this server did not ask for ID, which just put everything to waste, basically. So with that, I turn it over to the commissioners for any questions that you might have.
Commissioners?
Oh, I'm sorry. I do want to point out one further thing that I failed to mention. Olive Garden also participates in the BARS program, which is a secret shopper program, where BARS is an independent third-party company that will send in individuals to try and purchase alcohol from employees. And the employees either pass or fail whether or not they ask for identification. To date, this restaurant has passed every single BARS inspection that has ever taken place there. Since the time of this violation, there's been 3 past compliance check. It's typically done on a monthly basis, but because of COVID, it's been suspended since April. But I just wanted to pass that along for the board.
Thank you. Commissioners or questions?
I have a question, ma'am. I might have missed it. What is the policy of when a customer is carded?
I'm going to turn that over to Ms. Deloach to answer your specific restaurant questions. Ms.
Thank you.
Deloach, could you please state your name and address for the record?
Sure. Brandy Deloach. The address is 500 Gorsuch Road, Westminster, Maryland.
And could you please tell the board what your roles and responsibilities are with the restaurant?
Sure. So I'm the Director of Operations and Regional Manager. I work hand in hand with the leadership teams in each restaurant for things such as compliances, training, human resources, hiring, things of that nature. To answer your question, Chairman, our policy is that any employee that looks under the age of 40 is ID. So Ms. Schuyler, she made a definite mistake, which ended her employment with Olive Garden. She did have all of her signed handbook agreements. The restaurant is 100% to date with all of our training, which is a replication of TAMS and TIPS. And we have also been audited by the county. On November 30th, we had underage volunteer come in, and we did pass that one as well. So I did just want to mention that. When a guest tries to order, the policy is that if they look under 40, we ID them. Any vertical IDs are automatically denied. And if they present the ID, the team members write the date of birth down and enter that information into our computer system, which then would tell them that guest is underage.
Do the employees, when they're trained in-house, do they sign any type of document confirming the level of their training and when they received training?
Yes, sir. And that information was provided.
Mr. Benfer? Looking at our wave chart, looks like since the end of 2015, there is a string of successful compliance checks, consecutive, 7. And then there is a compliance violation of September 30th, 2019, a successful follow-up, and then a compliance failure October 22nd, 2020, but there's a successful follow-up. So do you agree with that?
That's correct.
I'll turn it over to Mr. Carey. Mr. Carey has this.
Yeah. So Inspector Carey, I think you said that record that I recited is correct.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
If you wish to see any of the documents that Ms. Schreckengost is referring to, they were sent as exhibits to the control room.
I don't need to see them. I trust the description that we've been given by the licensee and its representatives.
Any other questions?
So is there anyone in the facility that is TIPS or TAMS certified? Do you do that, or do you only do in-house?
Yes, ma'am. Every manager that's on staff, along with myself and all senior leadership, is TAMPS and TIPS certified. So there is always someone present on every shift that is certified. We don't have it for our team members, but all of our management does have it.
Okay. And since your last violation of September 30th, which was just a little over a year before the current one, did you make any changes within the facility to prevent it from happening again?
So we stopped taking vertical IDs. That was one of the changes that we made after the September occurrence. Again, had Ms. Walker asked for the ID, that would have been something for her. And we do have the same training. However, we do have quarterly training. That was something new that was additionally put in. And back to what our representative has stated, on December 15th, we had another breakout session that included all staff training for responsible alcohols to go over that information once again. And then since the occurrence in October of this year, managers have a minimum requirement that I have set forth that they have to kind of observe team members go to the tables, recommend beverages if one is ordered. verify that they are asking for the ID and utilizing the dash terminal as a tool. If not, it's automatic termination for a violation of our enhanced responsible alcohol sales program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Ma'am, you may have mentioned this, and I could have easily not or missed it, but how many servers do you have currently at the restaurant?
43 at this location.
And how many managers
And how
do you
many
have?
th-
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's what I was going to ask.
There's 4 managers at this location. Due to the size of this restaurant, there only is 8 servers on at any one time. So it's 1 manager to 8 server ratio on a Friday, Saturday night, 1 manager to 5 server ratio on a Sunday through Thursday.
And I think you testified there is always someone on the premises who has
Yes, sir, that's correct.
TIPS or TAM certified, and they're managers.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That's something that this board prefers, because there are some places where they have designated people who are certified, but they're not always on the premises. So that's a good policy.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnhart, do you have any further questions?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. No, not at this moment.
Commissioner Mulvaney?
Not at this moment, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Leanne, would you have anyone else to testify or represent
I do not.
Olive Garden?
I do not have any further testimony for the board.
I see before me, I assume the 3 licensees.
That
If
is
so,
correct.
just hold your hand up, but there's another gentleman here who has not been recognized. Mr. Boyd?
He's
Mr.
for the
Boyd
next
for
case.
Later this afternoon.
He's for the next case?
Correct.
Commissioners, do you have any other questions of the licensee or their
I do not,
counsel?
Mr. Chairman. I do not.
Testimony, therefore, is closed in this case. We will move into any closing remarks or closing comments. This time, counsel, would you like to summarize or make your closing statement?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to summarize, as the testimony has been presented, Olive Garden does a very, very good job of training their employees and keeping them up to date on what is required for responsible alcohol service in their restaurants. It is unfortunate here that we had a server who did not follow the policies and procedures that were in place at this location, but all the tools are available to every server who works at this location. And we would ask that the board take that into consideration in your deliberations.
Thank you. Inspectors, do you have any closing comments?
I know so, not at this time.
Testimony, therefore, is closed in the case. We will now discuss the merits of the case as presented to render a decision on behalf of the Board of License Commissioners.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with counsel's closing statement completely. Looks like this is a case similar to the one that we have just heard, where a licensee, a restaurant, in this case, makes fairly extraordinary efforts to prevent this from happening, and yet it did. This is a case, it looks like, where the employee just did not follow policy. The policy's in place. Again, as counsel mentioned, all the tools are there to help servers not fall into this trap, but this one did. It's regrettable, but I'm not sure how much more the licensee could have done other than toast sentries around the restaurant. This is a case where server failed to follow policy. That's also should be noted that there have been 2 violations in 13 months, which is a somewhat of a concern. But I do think that this licensee is doing a good job, by and large, of preventing underage sales.
Commissioner Moini?
I agree with Commissioner Barnhart. It's unfortunate that this employee did not follow policy. I understand that that kind of ties the hands of the establishment, but I also understand, unfortunately, this is the second violation just shortly over a year. So that concerns me as to being so close to each other. If there are no further comments, I would be prepared to make a motion.
I guess the only comment I would make, Mr. Chairman, is that I don't know if this was even mentioned, that there, prior to these 2 failures, there were 7 successful consecutive compliance checks. That may have been mentioned, but it may not. So I'm just going to put it on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, Commissioner Moini, you mentioned you were prepared to make a motion?
Yes, sir. I motion that I find in case number 6281 for the Olive Garden violation of sale to a minor, that I find the establishment culpable and would assess a fine for their second violation of $600.
Mr. Chairman, before I second that motion, I do want to point out that if the motion involved a suspension, I would feel that's appropriate. I also feel that the Commissioner's motion as it stands is also appropriate. So I will second the motion.
So a motion has been made and properly seconded that we find the licensee culpable and a fine of $600 be assessed. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So ordered. We find in the case of 6281, the licensee culpable and assess a fine of $600 to be paid within 30 days of the official written notice, which you will receive. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none. Hearing none, this case is complete, and we wish you continued success and hope that all of your efforts do not go in vain, as you have established a fine pattern for training. And unfortunately, we still deal with people who make mistakes. So best of luck to you, and hopefully that you continue to have a successful business. With that, this case is dismissed and closed.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you. Commissioners, while we're waiting for the next case in our official business, you have a request from Joe Hanson's for an extended area to be able to serve. We've got about 5 minutes. What are your thoughts or questions? My comment is it's a little, in my opinion, it's a little bit too far from the base, but I could be wrong.
That was a
I had
comment.
those same I'm sorry, I had those same concerns myself.
So it looks like service comes from the kitchen, either through an alley or across a sidewalk. Is that correct, Mr. Benfer? You're muted, Keith.
Sorry about that. Yes, that comes out the back door, across the parking lot of the jewelry store, which is probably about 80 feet, and then comes up the back alley to this location.
And they'll be carrying alcoholic beverages through that alley?
They're gonna have a bar. My understanding is, I got a message into Dave Johansson to call in. My understanding is the bar is gonna be in this area that they're gonna secure each night. They're gonna be
Okay.
bringing food from the kitchen.
I got
But
it.
I have a message into Dave to call in when I can get hold of him.
And what
Based
is
upon
on
the information that, go ahead, but based upon the information that we have, that under certain circumstances and certain times, there will not be a bar there. You use the in-house bar until certain dates and so forth, when they will put a temporary bar out there. That's the
That's my
information that was
understanding,
presented. Are you still with us, Keith?
Yes, I'm talking. Oh, there we go. We're back to full speed. That's my understanding. If we can table this, and I can try to get a hold of him after this next hearing or later.
My suggestion would be that it be tabled until he can present it in person.
Okay.
Commissioners, do you agree with that or not?
I agree with it.
I agree with that.
When you
Okay,
say
so
in
we will,
person- When you say in
What?
person, on virtual, like we are, or in person.
well, however it can be arranged, you know,
Okay.
maybe, may change next month. Who knows? We may not even be able to have a hearing. Who knows? We want to be able to have him to answer questions that we have and make a presentation. Also, I don't know if there's anything that requires the city's approval for this
We
transaction.
will get the city approval pending our approval.
You say he will get city approval pending ours?
Correct.
Has he already presented it to them?
I think they've been informed about it, but I'm not sure if the formal presentation has been made. But yes, they know about it.
It seemed to me there would be some concerns with that alley with traffic. Plus, that's a parking lot right now where he wants to go. So we'll table that request until Mr. Johansson can make a personal formal request in front of the board. However,
Okay.
it works out, whether it's personal in front of us, if we're all here, or whether it's virtual, we need to have him available to answer questions. Okay?
Yes, sir. Yes,
With
sir.
that, it's 2:30, and I would ask Mr. Dixon to call case 6286, please.
All right, case 6286, an application for the transfer of Penmar Liquors to Penmar LLC for Class A beer, wine, and liquor license to be issued to Alpesh Patel for the use of Penmar LLC, trading as Penmar Spirits, 5202 Francis Scott Key Highway, Tonytown, Maryland, 21787, in Election District 1. To file this matter, we have the following documents. Notice of public hearing dated December 25th, 2020. Bulk transfer affidavit dated December 28th, 2020. There's a notice of public hearing, December 18th, 2020. let's see, Alpesh Patel successfully completed alcohol awareness course. It's like March 28th, 2019. There's a response to Joe Vance's request to various state and local agencies from Mike Zepp, Tom Harris, permits and inspections. The box is checked. The above referenced establishment does meet the requirements of this office. Signed, Mike Zepp, code official. There's a December 9th, 2020 letter from Connie Schnooks to the board that they're in compliance with the Maryland law. There's a response to Joe Vance's request to Belinda Gassell Collections Office with the box checked. The above referenced establishment does meet the requirements of this office. Joe Vance sent a December 4, 2020 letter to Ms. Connie Schnooks, Revenue Specialist. Joe Vance sent a December 4, 2020 letter to Mr. Alpesh Patel about the public hearing today. And then there's an application, and the application includes character references, SDAT information, workers' comp certificates, criminal background information, contract of sale, driving record, a lease, financial ownership information, bulk transfer, application, floor plan. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that in evidence. This time I'd ask all those who intend to testify in this case, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by Ms. Vance.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. You may be seated. May I remind you all that as you are called to testify, please state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name is Alpesh Patel. My address is 201 Watersville Road, apartment 11, Mount Airy, MD 21771.
Mr. Patel, is that in Carroll County or Frederick?
Is it Carroll County?
Thank you.
My name is Frank Goldstein. I'm counsel for Mr. Patel and for the Patel Penmar LLC. My address?
Counsel?
Yes, 3030 Mill Island Parkway, Suite 308, and that's in Frederick, Maryland, 21701.
Mr. Goldstein, as the attorney, would you like to proceed with your request?
I'd be happy to. I believe you have someone else here who's prepared to testify if you'd like. That's Mr.
He can
Boyd.
He can be identified when his testimony is called for. So proceed with the case.
Okay, that's fine. We believe we have submitted through Ms. Vance all of the appropriate documentation necessary in this matter. It involves the transfer of the stock of Mr. Boyd's company to Penvar LLC and the pertinent liquor license if approved by this board. Also, the building in which the business is conducted will be transferred to an affiliated company called Sunshine Management LLC, and that company will lease the premises to Penmar LLC. And I believe you have the lease documents as well as the sale of the stock contract, as well as the real estate contract, which is simply called contract of sale. All of these are contingent upon approval by this board of the liquor license. Mr. Patel is now a resident of Carroll County. He has obtained the necessary character references. He has passed the criminal background check. So we are ready to go to the extent you're disposed to grant the liquor license. Mr. Boyd is here to verify, in essence, what I have said. I can call on Mr. Boyd if you'd like to hear from him, and Mr. Patel, of course, is here as well. Having said that, I am disposed to take questions or turn questions over to Mr. Patel and Mr. Boyd.
At this time, then, since two parties may be involved, you may, if you would, introduce Mr. Boyd in the testimony.
Okay, well, Mr. Boyd, you will state your name and address for the record, and you've been sworn in, so you can basically state the purpose of your being here and your intention to sell your license.
I think he needs to unmute himself, Mr. Gold.
Mr. Boyd, you know how to unmute yourself? I don't know if I can do it for him. No.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
My name's Frank Boyd. I live at 2957 Minges Mill Road, Tonytown, Maryland. I've been there over 40 years. I'm here because the liquor board said I had to be here. Now, I don't know what kind of questions you want to ask, but I'm here to answer your questions.
Well, why don't you tell the board, you know, why are you, after all of those 29 years, why are you disposed to transfer your business to the Patel Group?
Because I plan on selling out to retire for good.
So your intention is to retire?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any particular questions for Mr. Boyd?
Oh, one quick question. I kind of missed the part about Sunshine Management LLC. They're going to own the building that the business is located in. Is that right?
That is correct. There are two contracts with Mr. Boyd. One with Sunshine Management to sell the real estate. They will, so Sunshine Management is a company affiliated with Alpesh Patel. There are other members of the Patel family who have an ownership interest in that. And that company will then lease the premises to Penmar LLC.
Oh,
the other
okay.
contract is directly between Penmar LLC and Mr. Boyd to buy his stock.
Right. So Mr. Boyd is not going to be a landlord in any fashion.
That's correct, right, Mr. Boyd? You won't be a landlord.
Thank you, thank you.
I think he's muted up again, but he nodded his head no.
So I have a couple of questions for Mr. Boyd. Mr. Boyd, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, and I can hear you now.
Okay.
How long have you known Alpesh Patel?
About a year or so now.
Okay, and how did you come to know him?
Well, he walked into my store one day and asked me if I wanted to sell. He
Okay.
came in at the right time I wanted to sell.
Okay, so you've had, for last year or so, you've had business dealings with Mr. Patel, correct?
Have what?
You've had business dealings, you've been dealing with him businessman to businessman.
Yeah, we've talked.
Okay. Are you of the opinion that he's a fit and proper person to hold a liquor license in Carroll County?
Yes, sir, I believe he is.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Any more questions for Mr. Boyd?
Commissioner Winnie?
I have no questions for Mr. Boyd.
Mr. Boyd, if I understood right, you've been there in this business for 29 years?
I've owned the store for almost 26 years.
And how, during that time, the whole time, have you had a liquor license?
Yes, sir.
To your knowledge, have you had any prior violations of the liquor laws of Maryland or Carroll County?
I had 2 violations when I took the business over the first year and have not had one since.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Boyd, did you describe to Mr. Patel the things that he would need to do to be as successful as you in preventing underage sales?
I hope to. I mean, I've talked to him about it and told him what I think he needs to do, but it's, of course, you talk to somebody and it's up to them whether they're going to do it or not.
Sure, but it sounds like you've done a good job and you know how to do it. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Let me ask you a quick question. You're right on almost on the Pennsylvania-Maryland line. Do you accept vertical license for ID?
No, sir.
Do you have much kickback from possible customers because of that?
Not. I'd say maybe 1 or 2 max. No problems whatsoever. I've never had a problem with the customer once I refused him sell. As young as they are, they were still very respectful of the answer that I gave them.
Commissioners, here's a licensee who, for all practical purposes, probably could increase his sales simply because I'm sure that there are many vertical licensees come into this establishment. So just a point of information, you've heard him testify that if anybody should have a problem, it should be an establishment that close, but his testimony is that he doesn't have that much problem. With that,
Well, excuse me, sir, with being on the line and everything, once the young kids realize that you're not going to accept any of them, you don't have any problems at that point.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure that if the transfer is approved, that Mr. Patel will follow in your footsteps, keep that reputation going.
I'm sure he will, sir.
Questions of Mr. Patel?
Yes.
Let me, if I may, just set the scene for Mr. Patel a little bit. First of all, Mr. Patel, I think you just heard what Mr. Boyd said about these vertical licenses, and you understand what that means, and it would be your intention, I expect, to follow Mr. Boyd's footsteps in terms of how that is dealt with.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Patel, can you give the board a little bit information about some of your general business experience, and then we'll just open it up for questions.
Yes. Okay. I used to work in Subway restaurant before this thing. And I do have experience. A long time ago, I was working in a store in New York State. It was a convenience store and they carry beer over there. And I do have experience with that. We always check the license and underage checking. We always pass that too. We never had any problem in that. And I also work in the liquor business at Mountain Liquor in Frederick County. I go there sometime and I help them too. So pretty much I know what's going on. In this store, when we take over, we might introduce that system in our register also, that unless you enter the date of birth in the register, the transaction cannot be happen. That's what we are going to do that. So it's a foolproof method to check the ID and underage selling too. So it will help too. And any other question I can answer?
So Mr. Patel, you currently work with Mountain Liquors in Frederick County, is that right?
No, I'm not working there.
Okay.
You're
But
going
you have
there
worked.
to help out.
Huh?
You have gone there to help out from time to time, but you're
Yes.
not employed there.
No, I'm not employed there.
Okay. So other than Mountain Liquors, you have experience dealing with alcohol sales
Yes.
from a convenience store at some point?
It's in New York State. Most of the convenience store in New York State, they carry beer in that. And I do have experience selling beers. Yes.
So this would be the first liquor license that you've applied for?
That is correct.
And in your application, I noticed there was an address that appeared a few times for you, 113 Greenwich Drive, Walkersville, Maryland, Frederick.
Yes.
21793. I assume that you have moved from that address.
Yes, from their address to this Carroll County address. I just moved in October 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Patel, please?
A quick one. Mr. Patel, have you had a chance to peruse, to take a look at the rules and regulations of the Carroll County Board of License Commissioners, which you would be subject to should this transfer be approved? Have you looked at this?
I did not look, but I'm going to look that right now. I'll do that.
Well, you don't have to do it right now. There's a lot in there, but it's always helpful to start off.
Yes, I will do that. No problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to continue having a no vertical license policy.
Yes.
How many employees do you think you might employ?
Right now, I'm thinking to employ 3 or 4 employees there.
Okay, and I think that council was advised that you have received alcohol management training.
Yes.
Or 10.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking to do. Before I hire the person in the interview, I will get the commitment from that they finish this classes first and then they will start working at my store.
Okay,
I'm going to pay for that too.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you. Can I ask Mr. Goldstein to maybe summarize the character references, unless there are character witnesses to be presented? Can you just summarize what's in the file or what you have provided us?
Yes. By the way, I don't know how this is showing up on your screen, but I'm using my wife's computer. So if it says Phyllis, it should say Frank. But
that's how it's showing up. Yeah.
Okay.
I was wondering about that, Mr. Goldstein. I was going to say it was rather unique to have a gentleman named Phyllis.
Well, it's a brave new world. I think we all understand that. But it's Phyllis's computer, and that's the reason for that. In any event, the character references are basically people whom Al Pesce has come to know. Some of them fairly recently, since he is a new resident of Carroll County. But they're basically saying he's a man of integrity, he's a competent person, he is knowledgeable about business matters, and that he should be a highly suitable owner of this liquor store. So they're very good character references, and we're happy to have them.
Very good. And if I could just get a little more summary of Mr. Patel's background. I know a little bit, but what has he been doing for the last, say, 15 years?
Alpesh, you want to respond to that?
Yes, I was working in a Subway restaurant in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and that place is just closed down last month. But I was start working there from 2006 until last month. And
what was your role there?
I was a manager over there, and I was doing everything there.
So you managed the Subway restaurant?
Right, yes.
That was your primary occupation over the last decade or so?
That's what I was working. That Subway was my primary occupation, and I was working there from 2006 until like last month. So it's almost 14 years there. But before that, I used to work in a convenience store in Massachusetts. Before that, I was in New York also in convenience store. That's why I was working for somebody there. But my role was about to be a manager there.
Okay, thank you. For Penmar LLC, are you the only owner?
No, I have partners in that.
Okay, and can you just briefly describe for us the
name of partners are, one is Paresh Patel, one is Dilip Patel, one is Vijay Patel, and one is Rajesh Patel.
It is a family business.
Right, yeah. Okay. And Mr. Alpesh Patel is the only applicant?
Yes.
For this license?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And can you describe for us the ownership interests between the various members of the LLC?
We all are 20% each, 5%.
Okay. Very good, thank you.
Alpesh is the manager. It's an LLC, so he is the managing member.
Okay, so under the operating agreement, he makes the decisions in case.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's
Thank
correct.
Mr. Patel, as the managing partner, how much time do you expect to spend in the store?
Almost from opening to close in the beginning. I will be there all day in the beginning until I feel like everything going smooth and nice. But after that, we have to put some employees to operate because I cannot work all day like that. So we will have employees too. Right now, we did not hire any employees until now, but we are going to do very soon.
Okay, so Mr. Patel, you're Tips or TAM certified, and you can't be there all the time. Just as a comment, it's speaking for myself and perhaps other members of the board, I think it's always a good practice to have someone present on the premises who's had alcohol management training.
Yes.
It may not be technically required, but it certainly is something that I think the board approves of.
Yes, and well, I have recommended that to Mr. Patel, and he agrees wholeheartedly. He didn't want to hire anyone until the board approves of the transfer, and of course they get the appropriate training.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mulvaney, do you have any further questions or any questions?
Yes, sir. So, Mr. Patel, you had testified before that you plan to have any employees that you hire be TIPS or TAM certified, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what's going to be your policy on carding? I know heard you mention about entering the birth date into the computer. Is that so that you almost have to card everybody to get that information, correct?
Yes, and we also have, we are going to get training about the looking at him, his face and picture in ID also, not only just entering the entering is not, I mean, it's not a solution, right? We have to match the face physically on the ID also.
Lead.
So that is a part of training we are going to give to everybody in the store also.
But it will be your policy to card everyone.
Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Mr. Goldstein or Mr. Patel or Mr. Boyd?
No, sir.
If not, if there are no questions, testimony is now closed, and we will ask if there's any final statements or summation by Mr. Goldstein.
Well, just briefly, as I have gotten to know Mr. Patel, I can only tell you, I think he will be a fine owner. You'll be proud to have him as both a resident and businessman in Carroll County. He intends to do everything right, and I am confident that he will. I think that's all I would like to say about it.
Thank you.
Inspectors, do you have any final comments?
Well, I think that Mr. Goldstein has adequately given us reason to feel comfortable with this licensee. I think I take his comments to heart. I think that Mr. Patel has indicated he's not going to accept vertical licenses, even though he's very close to the Pennsylvania border. I think that's commendable. That's a good move. It's also good that Mr. Patel has indicated he intends to have properly trained personnel working at his store should we approve the transfer, and that he also is intending to have someone on premises at all time who is TIPS or TAM certified, and I think that is a very prudent thing to do, and it shows that I think he would be a good licensee in this regard.
Is that in the form of a motion?
No, sir. I was waiting to see if Commissioner Mulvaney wanted to make comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. I agree with all of your sentiments that it seems like Mr. Patel is very adamant about making sure that he's making the right decisions for this business. And I hope that he will be able to continue the great success that Mr. Boyd had in not having liquor board visits during his ownership of the facility. Thank you.
And I am prepared to make a motion if the chair prefers.
Please do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In case 6286, I'm of the opinion that Alpesh Patel is a fit and proper person to hold a liquor license in Carroll County based on the testimony that we have received and what is in our record in the file. Therefore, I move that we approve the application of Mr. Patel for the transfer of the license from Penmar Liquors to Mr. Patel. I assume it's for use of Penmar LLC.
Yes.
As long as conditioned on all required documents that this board requires be submitted in a timely fashion to the file.
Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Motion has been properly made and seconded that we find the applicant a fit and proper person and establishment to hold a liquor license and approve the application. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So ordered. Congratulations, Mr. Patel and Mr. Goldstein. We trust that you will uphold the traditions and the excellent record that Mr. Boyd has accumulated over his over 25 years of service, and certainly wish him the best in his retirement.
Yes,
There.
I do. Thank you. And
Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
No
Chairman.
other questions? You will receive a official written notice of the action of this committee within 30 days. Congratulations, best wishes. This completes case 6286.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
With that being said, it is a couple minutes past 3 and our 6263 case scheduled for 3 p.m. If you will please introduce that case, Mr. Dixon, and upon your direction, 6290 will be separate. Am I correct? Or will we do them?
No, we'll do them separately.
6263, please.
All right, case 6263, a Class A beer, wine, and liquor license issued to Dan Bowles for the use of Gunner LLC, trading as Hampstead Liquors, 720 Hanover Pike, Hampstead, Maryland, 21074. Violation hearing, sale to a minor. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A notice of intention to defend with the box checked. I do not intend to contest the alleged violations. It's dated September 17th, 2020, and signed by Dan Bowles. There's a delivery of notice of hearing for the case. Acknowledged receipt of letter dated September 10th, 2020, delivered by hand on September 11th, 2020. There's a September 10th, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Dan Bowles. There is a alcohol compliance violation sheet dated September 8th, 2020 that was filled out and completed by Inspector Keith Bedford. There is a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 under the station area of Brian L. DiLeonardo, State's Attorney. It's signed by Sherelle Yelton. There's a photograph of a volunteer with a 12 pack box of Bud Light. There's a vertical Maryland driver's license on the volunteer that indicates the volunteer will be under 21 until July 31st, 2021. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that into evidence. This time I would ask all those who intend to testify in this case, please stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in by Ms. Vance.
Charles, you gonna stand? No. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much, and may I remind you all that have been sworn in to testify that before you give your testimony when called upon, please state your name and your address. With that, Inspector Benfer, are you presenting case 6286?
Yes, Chairman. Inspector Keith Benford, Board of License Commissioners, on September 8th, 2020, at approximately 16:11 hours, I sent an underage volunteer into Hampstead Liquors with the intent to purchase alcohol. The volunteer got a 12-pack of Bud Light from the cold box. The volunteer took the alcohol to the front counter. The clerk, Cheryl Yelton, asked the volunteer for his ID. The volunteer showed his vertical Maryland license. The license stated that the volunteer was under 21 years of age. The volunteer is 19 years old. Mr. Yelton then sold the alcohol to the volunteer. I went inside and I spoke to Mr. Yelton. He stated he has had not any formal alcohol management training. Mr. Yelton also stated that he does not know the difference between a vertical or horizontal license. He also stated he has no in-house training from the store in reference to licenses. I make a motion to enter 2 pictures, one of the ID of the volunteer and a picture of the ID, the volunteer with the beer, in for evidence.
We'll accept that into evidence. Does that complete your case?
That concludes my case.
At this time, who is going to represent the licensee and tell us about their case? Please state your name and address before testifying.
My name is Daniel A. Bowles. My address is 614 Oakdale Drive, Hampstead, Maryland, 21074.
Thank you.
May I proceed,
Would you
Mr.
like-
Chairman?
Yes, sir. We'd like to hear what you have to say.
All right. Inspector Benfer outlined the events of that evening. Mr. Yelton has been employed with us for several years. His primary function with us is as a stock clerk. He was in a position of working the counter that evening. As I'm sure you've heard from many stores over the last 9 months to a year, staffing has been quite the challenge. We not only are fighting the COVID issue, but in our particular case, we've had some employees with surgeries and absences, which have caused employees to work in non-traditional roles. That was the case with Mr. Yelton. Previously, we had store-wide TAM training, 2 different sessions for everybody at the store. Mr. Yelton is a gentleman who's retired, works with us on a part-time basis, and travels quite a bit. He was not available for those TAM trainings, and so he, up to that point, had not been TAM certified. I would somewhat question Mr. Yelton's assertion that he's never been trained within the store. I know that as the previous manager of the store and as the liquor licensee, I've had conversations with all of our employees about carding and the importance of carding and the right way to go about it. Mr. Yelton was confused that evening because our policy up to that point had been no acceptance of vertical IDs. This contributed to Mr. Yelton's confusion, I think. But because of COVID and the inability for people to get to the Department of Motor Vehicles and get new regular IDs issued, we relaxed, I'll say, our policy of no vertical IDs. We have returned to that policy. Inspector Benfer has provided us with the signs that are all over the store, especially at our register for our staff to see, to know that no vertical policies are acceptable. Since that time, to further ensure that we don't have issues, we have invested in software. I believe that we forwarded a copy of the receipt of that software to the board. we've invested hundreds of dollars in software that now is used, which scans the driver's license and tells us straight on the screen that the ID is acceptable or is not acceptable. We have revisited our policies with all of our employees, emphasizing to them how seriously we take this, and the fact that we were a part of this violation was very disappointing and discouraging to us. That's not who we try to be as a store, and this was a situation that unfortunately did not work out as it should have.
Commissioners, do you have any questions of Mr. Bowles?
Quick question for you, Mr. Bowles. You indicated that during the COVID shutdown and the shutdown of MBA that your store kind of relaxed the policy regarding no vertical licenses because people were having a difficulty getting new licenses. And then you indicated that at some point in time, and we're discussing this violation of 9/8/2020, at some point in time, you went back to that prior policy. Was that immediately after this violation, or was that after a subsequent violation?
It was immediately after the first violation.
It was immediately after the first violation.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Thank you. And how many employees do you have now, Mr. Bowles?
I'm guessing about approximately 12.
Okay. And how many of them are TIPS or TAM certified?
Eight currently, and the rest of them are on. What we have done, sir, is we had difficulty arranging a TAM certification because the trainer that we had used in the past informed us that he could not get his license renewed because of a lack of access to the office building. We have gone to total online certification now. So we have 8 who are currently certified, and the rest of our employees are enrolled to be certified through online certification.
Okay. And what is the carding policy? When someone walks in the door, is there a uniform policy that all your employees understand when they card, when they may not card?
Our carding policy prior to this violation was that anyone who looked under 30 was to be carded. Subsequent to this violation, we raised that to 40. And unfortunately, in a couple of minutes, we'll talk about another violation. We now card everybody. And we have provided you with the signage that's on our door and in our store. We have gone to a blanket across the board carding policy.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bowles.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner
Mr.
Mulvaney, do
Bowles-
you have any questions?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Bowles, you said that after this violation, then you got the signage from Keith about the no vertical license. So you didn't have that posted before, even though you didn't accept vertical license?
That's correct.
Okay. And when you said you bought software, when did that software come in? When did you start using it?
Shortly after the violation, in
First or second violation?
the first violation. So
The software, my recollection is that the software came in October.
And you started using it immediately?
We put it into use immediately. As with all things, the first there it is. The order date was 9/15. And I'm going to say that it came in October. We put it into usage. There were some glitches. It took us, I think, a week or two to work them out. And then we started using it full time.
Do you allow now people who haven't had any kind of alcohol training to do sales?
Yes, yes, we do.
Well, I mean, if your stock clerk had to sell again, you know, would there be someone who does not have the experience to sell?
No,
Is that person going to be able to sell in the future?
What we've tried to do, ma'am, as best we can is our stock clerk has been reassigned to be strictly a stock clerk. So we tried to deal with that issue. The other issue that we've tried to do is we are trying to make sure that the 8 people who are TAM certified are spread throughout the schedule, so that the people who are still in the certification process are paired up with someone who is TAM certified. The unfortunate problem that we've had, and you've probably heard this before or not, we have a signage all over our store about wanting to hire people, but it's been an extremely difficult process, and it's been made especially so during this COVID era. There's people that either don't want to come out and be exposed to the traffic that you face in a liquor store, or they were getting $600 a week to not work, so they didn't want to come and work for the minimum wage that you make in a liquor store. I'm just trying to throw it out there that staffing has been difficult, so we're trying our best internally to deal with it by pairing up people with the TAM certification with more experience in our store that are able to work the register and the lottery area better, or are there to answer questions if any come up, while continuing to pursue getting certification for our non-certified employees.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Bowles, you are the licensee. Do you spend any time in the store?
Yes, sir. I work one actual shift a week and stop in about 2 other times a week to confer with our manager, Mr. Gunning, about any issues that he has. So I am in the store every week.
Thank you.
Is that Mr. Gunning sitting next to you?
Yes, sir, it is. He's been very kind to do. As you can tell by the color of my hair, I didn't grow up with this electronic meeting that we're doing, so he's helping me with this.
Okay, so he is your manager?
Yes, sir. He is the manager.
Okay, I'm not sure he's been introduced, but I might have missed it. I could be wrong. What is his full name?
I apologize. That's bad manners on my part. I'm sorry. This is Mr. Brian Gunning, who is the manager of Hampstead Liquors, and he is there on a full-time basis.
Brian, I'm saying Brian.
Brian, B-R-Y-A-N. His last name is spelled G-U-N-N-I-N-G.
And was he on premises at the time of this incident?
No, sir. I had left shortly before. I left around 4 p.m.
Okay, who made the decision to have Mr. Cheryl Yelton be behind the counter? Was that Mr. Gunning? Was that a decision of yours, or was it Mr. Bowles?
No, that was mine. Actually, both of our employees were at the register at that time. The main register person was working the lottery, was taking care of a customer on the lottery side. So as he got pulled away, Mr. Yelton stepped up to help a customer.
I see. Okay, thank you. And for the licensee, how has your business been since March of 2020? Has it been up or down or the same?
Our business has been up.
Yeah, I hear that from a lot of Class A licensees that during that shutdown, Business wasn't too bad.
Well, it wasn't. And there are a lot of factors that contribute to it, but particularly, as you all probably hear, in Carroll County, being as close to Pennsylvania as we are, when Pennsylvania went through their shutdown, that just opened up our floodgates.
Right. Yeah, I expect it would.
So 2020 has, Brian and I were speaking about it earlier. I'm sorry, I would tell you the numbers had I had them in front of me. I don't, but I believe 2020 was probably Hampstead Liquor's best year.
Yeah.
Since it's been open. Certainly since under our ownership.
Yes, thank you.
Any further questions of these gentlemen, Mr. Bowles or Mr. Gunning?
I just wanted to double check. I have a past violation of, I think the hearing was March 13th of 2019. So a previous violation in the last 2 years.
To the best of my memory, we have had one violation since our ownership, which started in 2015, I think. And
Okay.
that date does sound right.
Okay, thank you.
So what I see is there was a violation of January 9th, 2019. And the fine of $300 was assessed and that fine was suspended. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
So this would be the second violation. In that period of time, in under 2 years. This is the second violation? Does that sound right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Barnhart, did you just say there was a violation dated January the 9th, 19, was hearing on March the 13th, and a $300 fine was suspended? Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, I'm not sure the exact hearing date, but in my notes, I have the, for that violation of January 9th, 2019, the $300 fine was suspended.
Does that coincide with the file, Inspector Benfer? Who has the file?
Mr. Dixon has the file, but the date
I've
of
got the
the
file.
violation was 1/9/2019.
I
And the
just want to
hearing was
clarify.
like, March 13th, 2019.
And what was the disposition?
$300 fine suspended.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Any further questions of the licensee or his manager?
No, sir.
Hearing none, the testimony therefore is closed in this case, and we'll hear any final arguments. Mr. Bowles, do you want to make any final comments?
No, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to make the comments that I have.
Inspector Benfer?
Nothing else to add, sir.
Okay, testimony in this case therefore is closed, and the commission will now discuss the disposition and merits of the presentation.
Mr. Chairman, we're looking at a second violation in under 2 years. I think Mr. Bowles is in a position right now, as listening to his testimony, that he certainly is cognizant of our concerns and of the seriousness that underage sales is taken by this board. And I note that he has put into place some policies that I think we would find commendable, especially regarding the vertical licenses and things of that nature. But I do want to say that because his fine was suspended, the licensee's fine was suspended back in the beginning of 2019, that perhaps is an enhancement to any consideration of a fine in this case. Those are my thoughts, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Moini?
Uh, I can appreciate the fact that his fine was suspended the first time, and it was his first violation since opening in 2015. But this still is the second violation in a year and a half. And I think maybe more could have been done to avoid this happening. And I can absolutely appreciate the staffing issues that are thrust upon the people during the COVID and such. But I think it could have been avoidable.
Any further comments?
No, sir.
As testimony presented, this would be the second violation in approximately 18 months, and the first violation was found culpable and a fine was suspended. And within 18 months, we have the second violation. It's unfortunate, but it's the wrong kind of pattern to exhibit. So with that, do we have a motion or a discussion as to the disposition of case 6286?
I have this as 6263, correct?
I'm sorry, 6263. I looked at the one before.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
Please do.
I am making a motion to find Hampstead Liquors culpable for the violation of sale to a minor. It is the second violation, so I motion to assess a fine of $600.
Mr. Chairman, I would make an alternative motion. This is the second violation in under 2 years. The first violation was suspended. I feel that normally we assess a $600 fine for a second violation, but this is within a short period of time, and the first fine was suspended. And I feel there should be an enhancement in connection with the first suspension. You get fined, and given the grace of a suspension, that should make the licensee extra vigilant. And a little concerned that we have this second violation. I would move that the licensee is found culpable and that a fine of $750 be assessed.
Commissioner Barnhart, we have a motion on the floor. And before you offer that, is there a second to Commissioner Mulwiney's motion? Hearing none. Hearing none, the motion dies. Now you have a alternate or subsequent motion that you are offering?
Yes, sir.
Would you state that, please?
That the licensee be found culpable and that a fine of $750 be assessed for the reasons I stated earlier. That this is a case that deserves an enhancement, and that I do not feel this licensee was as vigilant as they should have been under the circumstances.
Is there a second to that motion?
I will second his motion.
A proper motion has been made and properly seconded that we find the licensee culpable, and due to the proximity of the second violation in a short period of time, that a fine of $750 be assessed. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
No, sir.
Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. So ordered. Mr. Bowles, we find you culpable for the violation as discussed and fine an amount of $750. which must be paid within 30 days of the official written notice of the action of this Board of License Commissioners here this afternoon. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
Hearing none, this concludes case 6263. And you will receive written notice, official written notice from our commission, and we'll have 30 days in which to satisfy the fine from that date. This concludes case 6263. We're going to take a 2-minute break and come back to 6290. Okay, we're back in session. This time I would ask our attorney, Mr. Dixon, to call case 6290, please.
All right, case 6290, a Class A beer, wine, and liquor license issued to Dan Bowles for the use of Gunner LLC, trading as Hampstead Liquors, 720 Hanover Pike, Hampstead, Maryland, 21074, violation hearing sale to a minor. In the file of this matter, we have the following documents. A notice of intention to defend with the box check, I do not intend to contest the alleged violation. Dated December 4th, 2020, signed by Daniel Bowles. There's a delivery of notice of hearing. Acknowledge receipt of letter dated December 1st, 2020, delivered by hand December 2nd, 2020. There's a December 1st, 2020 letter from Joe Vance to Dan Bowles about today, the hearing. There's a alcohol compliance violation sheet dated November 30th, 2020, and signed and completed by Inspector Charles Carey. There is a notice of violation for selling alcohol to persons under 21 under Brian L. D. Leonardo, State's Attorney Stationery. It's signed by Luke Gonzalez. There's a photograph. There's a vertical Maryland driver's license of the volunteer that shows he's under 21 until July 31st, 2021. The volunteer is outside the store with a 12-pack of Corona Premier. I would ask that the file be entered into evidence.
We'll accept that in evidence. This time I would ask all of those who intend to testify in this case to stand, raise your right hand, and be sworn in if there are any additional testimony. If not, Ms. Vance?
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated. Inspector Carey, you are presenting this case.
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Liquor Board Inspector Charles Carey, Carroll County, Maryland. On 30 November 2020 at 2:30 p.m., I sent an underage volunteer who was 20 years old in to purchase alcohol from Hampstead Liquors. The volunteer got a 12-pack of Corona Premier beer. He took this to the server, Luke Gonzalez, who did not ask for any form of ID, and sold the beer to our volunteer. I interviewed the seller, Mr. Gonzalez, as to why he did not ask for ID. He advised he was busy with other customers and did not ask. Mr. Gonzalez is not TIPS or TAM certified. All paperwork was completed and signed. And also I request that both photos in this case be entered into evidence. That's our case.
We'll accept that in evidence. Mr. Bowles, I assume that you are going to make comments in regards to this violation?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I am. But for the life of me, I'm not sure what. You have the facts in front of you. The facts are accurate. Mr. Gonzalez is not one of our more regularly scheduled employees. He was with us that day, again, because of the staffing issues that I referenced in my prior testimony. Mr. Gonzalez made a mistake. He made a horrible mistake. He made the worst mistake that you can make. Mr. Gonzalez is no longer employed by our store. Subsequent to this, we put into place and have prominently displayed the carding of everyone. We obviously have no choice. We take these violations seriously. We're heartbroken about them, and we got to fix it so it doesn't happen in the future. So we're committed to being a good citizen of our community. We make donations to NESAP, Boy Scouts, anybody that comes in and asks for a donation. We try to help them. We want to do the right thing by our community, and that means following the rules and making sure that no alcoholic beverages get sold to underage. We take it very seriously. The conversations that we're having this afternoon doesn't seem like we do, but we do. Again, we've gone to a policy of getting everybody TAM certified. That's not, even in spite of the difficulties of doing it, doesn't matter. It's got to be done. We're in the process of doing it. We've gone to a policy of carding everybody who comes into the store using the new software that we've acquired that gives us the comfort of knowing that they are underage or not. And Mr. Chairman, I wish I had something else to say, but I will make this comment, not that I guess it's inappropriate. We can as management do everything we can to put policies in place, but unfortunately we can't always control the human element. And this one, the human element broke down. It doesn't matter. As managers, it is our job to control the human element, and we just got to do a better job.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. Commissioners, do you have any questions, comments?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as far as comments, I don't have any questions. Mr. Bowles, I fully accept his sincerity and his desire to avoid this problem again, but it is a problem, and kind of a bad problem, as I think we're talking about a follow-up check following a failure. So a second failure during a follow-up, as was noted during the last hearing, last month's hearing, is something that is very troublesome to the board. This is a third violation for selling to underage. I think was it 22 months. There's not a whole lot more to be said that it wasn't said the first time around, other than the fact that this is a follow-up. And to be consistent in recent decisions, I went back and looked at last month's orders and so forth in my notes, and I see that the commission felt that this, because it was a follow-up violation, that is, again, an enhancement of what we normally do. Normally, we double fines as they come along in succession like this. I don't think we should double this fine from the one that was just handed out. I think at the last hearing for a very, very similar case of third violation that was a follow-up, there was a fine issued of $1,400. I'm going to turn this over to Commissioner Mulvaney, and I will ask her to make the motion and employ her judgment on what should be done in this case.
Thank you, Commissioner Barnhart. Again, it's unfortunate that it's happened again so quickly. The follow-up, we hope that no one fails to follow up. We hope that the first time around you become diligent as to what happens. I do understand again that you're at the mercy of your employees. I will, if Chairman Browning has no comments, I am prepared to make a motion.
Commissioner Mulvaney, before you make a motion, I would ask, since this is a separate case, and while we've heard just about everything can be said previously, I would simply ask if the licensee and his manager would have anything else to say before we proceed.
I would like to add, Mr. Chairman, and perhaps Mr. Carey brought this up. Subsequent to this violation, we have had a follow-up, and we passed that.
That's correct.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Inspector Carey, do you have any follow-up?
Nothing at this time, other than we were there on 12/3/2020 as the follow-up.
Okay. With that being said, Commissioner Mulvaney, you had something else you wanted to offer please do.
Only a motion, sir. So
Please
I will,
proceed.
thank you. I will take Commissioners Barnhart's guidance in this situation. And I make a motion to find the establishment culpable in case 6290, violation of sale to a minor. And I would assess a fine of $1,400.
Motion's been properly made. Is there a second to the motion?
Second that motion.
Motion has been properly made and seconded that we find the licensee culpable and assess a fine of $1,400. Is there any further discussion on the motion?
Yeah.
Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. So ordered. Mr. Bowles, we find you culpable of the charge of sale to a minor on November of 2020 and assess a fine of $1,400, which must be paid within 30 days of official notice in writing of the action of this committee this afternoon. Do you have any questions?
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't.
If not, may I add comments to the effect that this is highly unusual for 3 violations in less than a 2-year period. And while the fines that have been assessed are significant, they may not be, in some people's eyes, serious enough to warrant a suspension. Therefore, I certainly would urge you to be very, very vigilant of checking IDs in the future and forever. With that, gentlemen, you're dismissed. As I mentioned, you will have 30 days in which to satisfy the monetary fine upon official notification in writing of this decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
At this time, we will revert back to our official business agenda. Inspector Benford, I assume everyone has been sent the compliance order information that you provided from the health department. Is that correct?
Yes, they have been. They should have, Tina, you should have an email with this on it.
Would you like to make any comments?
In the past 2 weeks, we've closed, well, the health department has closed 2 businesses down for failure to comply with the compliance orders issued by the health department. Fratelli's restaurant was closed on New Year's Eve, 12/31, for overcrowding. And Bellissimo's was closed this last Friday for failure to obey the compliance order. We have 5 establishments who have compliance orders issued by the health department.
Okay, let's take these one at a time as we have them here. On my list, Frankie's Bar and Grill. They have been issued how many warnings?
They've been visited 6 times. They have 5 warnings.
But they have not been closed down. Is that it?
They have not. They were issued, the final order, compliance order, was issued on August 24th. since that order was issued, they've been obeying all the rules.
So since that order was issued, they've been in compliance, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, the next one is Staples.
Order was
They've
issued
been
on October 31st. And it's been 5 site visits. Or, yeah, 6 site visits.
And they're in compliance.
They're in compliance too. If they violate again, they will be closed down.
Keith, did you say they have 5 warnings or 5 visits?
Well, it says site visits. 4 site visits, and then well, I know one time there was a numerous violation. I think that's the 719. They were issued. We've been out there like 5 or 6 times. The notes here from the health department, I don't understand. I know they were issued an order. Since the order's been issued, they've been behaving themselves.
Okay.
So basically what you're saying in a nutshell is the health department will issue 5 or 6 warnings and then close them upon the next or the next non-compliance?
Yeah, they get 5 or 6 warnings, and then an order is issued, compliance order is issued that lays out, that tells them if they violate again, they will be closed down. That's the last straw the health department issues.
Okay. So Greenmount Bowl is like the first 2. They're in compliance, and if they get another one or whatever's necessary, they'll issue an order.
Correct.
Lissimos have been ordered to close, correct?
They were
closed.
They were closed. They had a compliance order issued on the 5th of January. We went back on the 8th of January. They failed the compliance order, and they were closed that night.
Fratelli's is next.
The compliance order was issued on the 21st of December. They visited on New Year's Eve, the 31st. They were over capacity, and they were closed down.
So they have been closed.
Correct.
The last one is Island Green.
It does not have the date when the order was issued, but they've been in compliance since the order has been issued. And they have had to have any more outdoor events.
They have not been closed.
Correct. They have not been closed.
So the issue before us in a nutshell is Bellissimo's and Fratelli's.
Correct.
And it's my understanding that you have issued them violations.
Fratelli's was issued a violation notice. Bellissimo's will issue a violation notice tomorrow. They were only closed for 3 days. They're both businesses have been reopened since the closure.
Commissioners, Inspector Benford and I have discussed this, and it was my feeling that since the health department closed them down, that they are in violation of our liquor laws as far as conduct and the community is involved.
Public safety. Public safety.
If you have any other comments or suggestions, we'd like to hear them.
I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that they are in violation of public safety, and I think there might even be another section of either the law or rules and regulations that require a licensee to conform with all local regulations, all state regulations, codes, and et cetera, et cetera. It's kind of a catch-all as we've been discussing the last few weeks. So I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I think that there is a violation of the rules here, at least allegedly.
Commissioner Mulvaney, your comments, thoughts?
I agree with both you and Commissioner Barnhart.
So these will be issued requesting their presence at a hearing of
Yeah,
this
they're
commission.
scheduled for March, I think it's March 10th hearing.
Are we going to issue a request that they attend a hearing to all licensees who are listed on this sheet, Keith?
No, I've only issued to Bellisimo's and Fratelli's since they were closed down and they violated the compliance order from the health department.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Dixon, your position as our legal advice, do you have any comments as to this situation at this time?
No comments. I'm just curious, Keith, if you know, when the health department closes a business down, do they have any sort of due process rights to appeal what the health department did? Do you know?
Both places were closed on a Friday. Well, Fratelli's was closed on a Thursday, and Bellissimo was closed on Friday. Monday morning, they met with the health director, Ed Singer, and went over the policy, and they were reopened by Ed Singer. Does that make sense?
Okay, now I understand it.
Commissioners, are you in agreement with the action that's being taken?
I am, Mr. Chairman. I agree with what you've discussed and what you've recommended. I fully agree with you.
I'm also in agreement, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so Inspector, you will keep us apprised
I
of
will.
any other orders issued by the health department. It's apparent to me that from this list that you've provided, the health department is bending over backwards twice in order to allow these establishments who are under duress because of the COVID to maintain business and so forth, but somewheres along the line has to be drawn. Is there any other business to be brought before this group before we adjourn?
David Johansson's on the line. He's going to talk about some of his plan.
Mr. Johansson was tabled. He's going to have to wait until next month.
Okay.
Any other business to be brought before the board? If not, our next meeting is February the 10th at 10 o'clock a.m. This meeting is adjourned.